Hi everyone, welcome to today's shows. And this is Binary Podcast Show. Here we talk about technology trends and AI for higher education. Today we are going to talk about an important topic on reimagining higher education with AI innovation and the future of campus. And I'm excited to welcome Dr. Nick Ladany. He's the president of San Francisco Bay University and a respected higher education leader with decades of experience as being an university president, dean, and an academic innovator. Prior to San Francisco Bay University, he has worked with multiple universities in various leadership roles. Uh, we are excited to welcome you, Dr. Ladani. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Satish. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So, Nick, I just want to start with with your background. Like, I see that you worked with Oglethorpe University, and then you worked with San Francisco Bay University. So, how do you feel that you have mentioned in your LinkedIn post in various places that San Francisco Bay University is more of a startup kind of an challenger brand? How do you define that? What made you to say that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that great question.
Mhm.
Well, I think we're in a unique position at San Francisco Bay University to really upend higher education. So when we talk about challenger brand, we think about Airbnb.
Mhm.
I like to say we're going from the Yugo version of higher ed to the Waymo version of higher ed. That we
Uh,
are purposefully changing how higher ed is being delivered and doing it in a way that's both affordable and accessible. And I think up to this point, higher ed has largely failed a lot of students, particularly students who have not had easy access or resources to higher ed. So we really, even though we like to think of ourselves as a 40-year-old startup, we've been
mhm.
around 40 years, but it was only a couple years ago that we really started to, when I arrived, we built a new leadership team. And I like to say that we got a bunch of folks that have a healthy disgruntlement with higher education, but who are firmly committed to what higher education can do and be life changing for folks. So we said, well, look, if we want to restart higher education, what should that look like? Well, let's start by capping our classes at 20. We know that relationships are the key feature to any meaningful success for students, and that's the relationship with faculty, staff, and administrators. We decided to train faculty how to teach. I always
Mhm.
like to say that dirty little secret in higher education is faculty have never been trained in how to teach.
Yeah.
And there's no other labor force in the world where you would hire people that don't have the skill in the job we want them to do. Uh, Someone pointed out recently, or not long ago, that the other job may be politicians. But more importantly,
Right.
we believe that faculty, the best faculty, and we have the best faculty, there are great faculty around the country, but they're the ones that develop relationships with the students. They know these key skills on how to help students learn, and not just learn content, but learn what it means to be interpersonally connected, what it means to be a good citizen, and so forth. So we built that in. We offer wraparound services for all our students, including academic support services, unlimited mental health, because we know that the foundation of educational success is the interpersonal, and social success that students have. So we think that's also critical. And then lastly, we are affordable. We
Mhm.
have a tuition that's about $10,000 a year. We're going to be launching our MBA program, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment, but that's going to be launched in a few months, and it's going to cost $10,000
Wow.
for the entire degree.
Mhm. How do you make this more affordable? Like that's one of the promise you I see in your website also. How does that make it more affordable and do it for everyone?
Well, I think traditionally,
Mhm.
universities were affordable. Back
Yeah.
when I was in school, in the early 80s, tuition was around, I think it was $536 a semester at the University of Maryland.
Wow.
And now what we've seen over the last, in this case, 30, 40 years, 40 years now, we've seen tuition outpace inflation, outpace every other um, billable product, if you will, including healthcare in those 40 years. So it's become unaffordable. It's become a race to the superficial, like I say. I like to say that, we have, for example, rock climbing walls on campus, or a lazy river, or a lake, or athletics that look like professional athletics. There's only a dozen schools nationally that actually make money on athletics. But we focus so much on that if that's as if that's the panacea for all our challenges. And so if you streamline education, by the way, we also have our faculty teach year round. So they don't just teach 3 months, 6 months, a couple classes. Our faculty teach 9 classes. And by the way, we pay our faculty. Our faculty start somewhere in around the $125,000 range per year, but they teach year round. And I think the best faculty want to do that anyway. So we really went all in on teaching and making sure that the students were supported as they needed. But financially, it can be done. Most universities just haven't had the wherewithal or the ability to look at their finances honestly and say, hey, this is not what it needs. Now, we do have resources, to be fair. We do have resources in terms of an unrestricted endowment that helps support it. But, we need to be net positive like everyone else.
Yeah.
So I think there are ways to do it, but I think universities have traditionally just ignored those ways or are unwilling to
Change.
be really, I would say, fiscally prudent. They say they are, but they're really not. You can't tell me you can have $1 billion endowment and can't offer mostly free tuition to all the students. You're doing something else. What else are you doing? And that's the question that we like to ask. And that's the question we asked ourselves and then redesigned the university from that view.
Wow. Interesting. We should think about it. But the other important aspect, I think, from your various experiences, how do you think the higher education has changed from the day you started and now? What things have changed in your opinion?
Well, as I was mentioning, there's been a lot of increase in costs. Now, to some
Okay.
extent, but not fully,
Okay.
there have been state and federal subsidies that have disappeared, that have actually made publics begin to look more like the privates.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changed. I think the online education approach has changed. And what we're finding is, students don't need that face to face all 4 years. In fact, they probably are perfectly fine. And all the data points to students are perfectly fine with a number of courses being online in some version. We also think, the other thing that's important to understand, and we've grabbed onto this, is the 90 credit undergraduate degree as the new standard. The
Mm-hmm.
old standard 100 years ago, we developed these degrees that are 120 credits for a 4 year degree.
Mm-hmm.
Faculty, we did it largely to have faculty, give faculty something to teach. It wasn't really about the liberal arts. It was about giving faculty something to teach. And there was no magical reason why we need to have 120
Okay.
credits versus 90 credits. In fact, Oxford, Cambridge, and others have a 90 credit degree. So if they can do it, we feel like we can do it. And you can do it. Part of the challenge has been faculty have gained more control over the curriculum than they
Yeah.
used to have. And it used to be in the service of students, and now it's really more in the service of faculty at a lot of places. So, our view is faculty actually have no business designing curriculum because they're not curriculum designers. They're great content experts, but we need to help them teach and we need to help them design the curriculum. And those are things that should be embraced at all institutions, but they're not. In fact, what faculty do is push back and say, not only am I in control or I own the curriculum, I've heard that at a number of different places, but that they also don't want to be evaluated like a typical what any other person in a company would be evaluated or institution would be evaluated. They want to be exempt from that. And that has led to some stagnation. It's not all the faculty's fault, it's also administrators' fault. We start adding administration to campuses, and the problem has been the administrators largely have to be, you know, mollifying different groups, different constituent groups, without a real clear mandate on how to make it be done effectively. And so
Okay.
that's added to problems. And then we really basically exploit students' payments and their belief in higher education. So we keep upping the tuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another problem that's happened instead of being more fiscally prudent. And they're upping tuition because they could, not because they should, but because they could. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a fundamental problem in higher education too. We lower expectations. We actually give families and students high. I would say give them high hopes, and when they arrive in higher ed, we expect them to have low expectations, and
Mm-hmm.
that mixture never works.
Okay, I understand. And what is something that excites you most, like seeing the future with many innovations happening, on what's more exciting for you now?
I think
Then.
AI is coming about in an important time and gives us
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity also to lower costs, but also be more effective. So
Mm-hmm.
we've developed our MBA Pro Plus, which is a version of it's largely online, but
Mm-hmm.
it's got both a human component where we believe faculty are best, and we also have an AI component where students are learning with AI avatars from faculty and doing experiences that increase their ability to become proficient in certain skills. I'll give you an example. Anybody can teach Harvard's uh, skills of negotiating, right? Negotiation skills by Harvard, da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have an avatar professor look like us and interact with students in an interactive way and give personalized education that's neurodivergently compliant, that's also providing students with customizable and personable and personalized education.
Mm-hmm.
So they do that, they learn the content, then our students go and have an experience with an avatar boss where
Mm-hmm.
the student has to negotiate a salary increase.
Okay.
Well, guess what happens? They now have to demonstrate the skills they just learned about. They do
Okay.
it for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and then immediately they get feedback on how they did, the extent to
Okay.
which they were proficient in those skills. And here's the beautiful part: no one's ever perfect at it right away, or very few people are perfect at it right away.
Yeah.
Student can go back, try it again, and learn the skills like all of us learn skills. None of us end up, in jobs that are completely linked to a major.
Yeah.
Accountants may be the closest, but even they aren't exactly in the jobs they do and end up doing aren't matching exactly what happens in their educational experience. So in our case, they really do engage in experiences that put them in a position to show that they have those skills when they graduate. And by the way, that's the AI avatar based experiences. We do it in a closed system using our pedagogy that we developed. That's not just ChatGPT giving them all kinds of praise for doing everything right. Our AI agents, our tutors,
Mhm.
actually frustrate students a little. We
Wow.
want them to engage in intelligent failure. We
Mhm.
want them to be able to try something and make a mistake and then learn from that mistake, which is what all of us do in most of our experiences, whether it's avocational or vocational.
Yeah.
And then they also meet with a human professor who does what human professors do the best, which is build community, mentor, develop meaningful relationships, offer career guidance and advice. All those things that we think of when we think about the best professors, they weren't just teaching us content, they were actually working with us in a way that made a difference or a transformational difference for us in college.
Interesting. And I want to understand that some initiatives that you have launched with Innovative Bay Act at Verizon's AI Lab. Uh, can you talk about that? Like they are not something a typical university programs, but can you talk about that?
You're talking Innovate Bay?
Yeah, Innovate Bay.
Yes. Yes. So Innovate Bay is
I
our
think it is with
incubator.
Verizon AI Lab, right? You did that as a partnership. You did it with Innovate Bay with the Verizon partnership, right?
No, we were at the Verizon Center. I think maybe that's
Verizon
what you're
Center.
thinking
Okay.
about. Yes. No, Innovate Bay is something we created as an incubator for
Okay.
really providing opportunities for folks that traditionally have not been had access to incubators to incubate their business. And it's become quite the phenomenon, certainly in our
Mhm.
region in the Bay Area. People are loving, I think, what we're doing. Rohan Brown, who is our managing director, has done an amazing job connecting us with the community and bringing on small companies, and we provide them some seed funding in order to one day hopefully be successful. That's our goal, and it's a quite exciting place. And as a university, our students have access to that.
Yeah, that's my next
So
question.
we have a program called what's our signature scholarship program called our Startup Scholars Program. And this is
Mhm.
for undergraduates.
Mhm.
And what it is it gives free tuition, free room and board, a monthly stipend, and a $10,000 stipend to go toward a passion project or a startup business that they create with our guidance. So these students they're business people. They're right away they learn they generally have some entrepreneurial skills, but we really facilitate further development of those skills as they're learning throughout their curriculum, but also when they get connected to the incubator.
Wow. So, how is that? Anybody in your universities can apply, or is there anything they have to do some kind of an MVP product, or how does that you qualify that?
For the application for
Yeah.
the Startup Scholars Program. So these
Okay.
are traditional undergraduates. Um, there is an application, but it's really an essay
About the.
based on what their company should look like. So, we don't expect 17 and 18-year-olds to have a full, they're not on Shark Tank. These are not
Yeah.
Shark Tank rejects. These are people that are very early in their career and their thinking, but they have some outstanding ideas. And that is what they present to us. And from that written piece, they get selected in part for the program.
Right, interesting. And like if I think AI is transforming every industry, and it is also reshaping the teaching, learning, and the student engagement. So, how do you see that? Like, is it going to make a significant improvement in students' engagement, specifically student retention and enrollment? What's your take on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Our current graduation rates hovers around 80 to 85%, depending on the student population. Um, the average graduation rate nationally 4 year is 50%. And by the way, most universities are using 60% graduation rates. That's just to me unacceptable. Then call yourself a 6 year college. Don't call yourself a 4 year institution. We want to
Mhm.
have a 3 year graduation rate of 80% or more. And that's our current goal. We just got the 90 credit undergrad
Yeah.
degrees. So that is our goal. Now, where do universities or how do universities do that? AI can be a huge help. They can offer tutoring, or like we've said, you can offer these faculty avatars that are available 24/7. We say it's the best version of the best faculty you've had in the area of learning. Now, the human faculty provides an important role, but the AI can supplement, the AI avatars can supplement a lot of that. And, our AI tutors are available 24/7. Most faculty obviously can't be. Uh, the
Mhm.
vast majority, if not all faculty, can't be available 24/7. So if our students are up late or they're working late, and they got to come home and they want to do an assignment and they're stuck on something, we've all had that experience like, oh, I got to now make an appointment with the professor. That could take a week. He or she may not even get back to me. And then I have to talk to his friends, and it's a huge waste of time. And frankly, not a good learning design approach. AI allows for that learning. But I would, of course, emphasize the point that you don't want AI just to give answers. Because if you just give answers, that's just a fancy Google search. What
Yeah.
we want is students to learn concepts and then apply those concepts. And AI can do that. And AI, we're showing that, in our early design of the courses, we've seen that that can happen and it's quite extraordinary. But universities aren't embracing it. If you look at, what universities are doing, they're largely trying to avoid it. How do we get students to stop using AI? How do we get students, it's cheating. And
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the calculator, it reminds me of the computer, every new technology. This is arguably a bit different, but it's still important to understand how you can use it effectively so that our students can have jobs later in life.
I understand. So, what do you think about the traditional degree? Like in next 10 years' time, will they be not effective, or it will has to change significantly to make it relevant?
Well, I think degrees are going to have to change. I don't know that we need the 60 major university anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're doing is we're only going to have about half a dozen majors, maybe a dozen majors at most, that are purposefully interdisciplinary.
Mm-hmm.
Because if anytime you're answering an important question, you have to be interdisciplinary. And if you only look at one field, you're missing a big chunk. And with AI, we can become experts enough and integrate knowledge in ways maybe AI can't to solve a human problem. I'll give you an example of an interesting emerging discipline, which is cyber psychology. So, cyber psychology integrates psychology, communications, computer science, marketing. It's really how people interact with social media, is one of the examples that can be used. But you need to know all those fields. You can't just say I'm a psychology person who's only going to focus on the human behavior aspect of social media. That's going to be inadequate to fully understand it. It's multi-factor based. What we do with social media, or how students are affected, or kids and adults are affected by social media, is a multifactorial problem that can't be addressed in one field alone. So I do think we're going to have integrated broad majors that might lean in to the arts or might lean into business. But I think everyone's going to have many more skills um, that are not necessarily content based, but process based skills.
Understand. And I know students expect a lot from universities these days, and workforce also is going to be changed in the future. So, how do you think the students are getting ready for the future workforce needs? Like they need to be trained with AI fluency. How does that change is going to be viewed?
Yeah, I think right now the way universities are structured, they're woefully underpreparing students for the
Yeah.
future. And I'd love to see universities embrace it, but you've got so many factions in university that prevent innovation. There's innovation pockets usually at universities, but not true innovation across the entire higher ed space. So I think it's going to be important that universities do rethink how they're going to be preparing students, and we'll see if they are able to do that. I do think they're going to be pushed to. We think we're going to be a model for how universities can do it. We believe that firmly. Our students are early stage giving us that indication that they are. And I think we'll see how that goes at other places. But universities better change, or as we see, about one is closing every week, and it's
Mhm.
not surprising. And they should have seen it coming years ago, and they don't. And,
Mhm.
shame on them for not really understanding how things work.
Yes. And the other important thing is the online education that is rising, like number of students wanting to do online education rather than an physical going to college type. So, what do you think? Will that be in more rise, or will that be still the traditional way of going to colleges? Will that be more in the future? What's your take on that?
So I think online will have its place. We're developing what we're calling neighborhood campuses,
Mm-hmm.
which are small footprint campuses, could be 4,000 square feet of space that would
Mm-hmm.
have a smallish or largest seminar room, fits about 20, plus
Mm-hmm.
a series of like WeWork type lounge spaces for students to learn through an online approach.
Mm-hmm.
But that alone won't work. We see the problem with graduation rates in online universities. I think I always say to students and their families, look at graduation rates. If they're below 4 year graduation rates, not 6 year and not 8 year, 4 year graduation rates. What is the 4 year graduation rate? If it's less than, let's say, 70%, something's
Mm-hmm.
wrong. So I think students are going to need pathways to into higher education, through higher education, that will help them graduate. And I think for a traditional undergraduate student, I do think there's something important about that interpersonal connected with adults and family, and sorry, and professors, where they can have that human interaction, and that can be done in a much smaller space. That's the
Okay.
neighborhood campus concept. But that may only be a year or two. The third year, most students are like, just give me the degree and go.
Okay.
Our goal is get them a degree and get them to grad school or get them a job. One of those two. That's what their goal should be when they graduate. And anything short of that, we're doing a disservice to students. I mean, look, there are some incredibly wealthy families that can, let their students become, just meander through an educational experience and learn lots of different things. But it's really not, I don't think, helping them out in the end to become well functioning adults.
Okay.
And so I think we're going to see that shift happen for students in the near future. And so, by the way, our neighborhood campus model is you can get your degree, well, maybe in a public library or a community-based partnership that we're creating. We're starting to build one in San Jose, then we're going to go to Oakland, then we'll start around the Bay Area. Then the goal is to go south into LA, San
Hmm.
Diego, and then go eastward. But those opportunities for neighborhood campuses, they don't cost that much, especially if you're leasing space. We don't need, a 50 or 100-acre campus everywhere we go in order to be effective. And that's been the problem with a lot of universities. They don't understand how to scale. Just throwing what you do online also isn't effective. If
Okay.
you don't have good teaching that's happening on site and you throw it up online, basically you have the same kind of good, bad, and ugly teaching online.
Yeah.
So you have to redesign what you do in the online space, and you have to redesign what you're doing on the campus space. And that's what we're looking to do.
I always see this as more of a retail world. Like still, people are going to store and buying it, though online is very much in every store. People still prefer to go to the store and buy it. So I hope that physical thing would be there.
I think some version should be there. I agree.
Yes.
I think there is a value to that,
Yes.
just not at 30,000, 40,000, 100,000 a year.
Yeah. Maybe. Yes. That's right. So the other challenge that universities face is the students' enrollment. So I think more and more universities are struggling, and as you said, universities are closing down. So what they should do to make it to bring it back or to bridge the gap on the enrollment issues?
Well, I think it's because every university, or most universities, not every, I shouldn't say that, most universities are still targeting the 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah.
There are 40 to 50 million students nationwide in the US nationwide that have some college but no degree. Why not focus on them? Why not look at other populations of students that you can attract and bring in and help be successful? If we're all trying to fish in the same pond, that's why there's a problem. There is not really a shortage of students. There is a demographic cliff,
Hmm.
but like swimming from, if you're only swimming in that pond, yes, eventually you're not going to be able to be very successful as, in fishing, but or swimming or whatever you're going to do in that pond. But more importantly, there are many students, not just nationally, but worldwide, that need an education. And the question is, why do we keep focusing on the one thing that was effective 20, 30, 40 years ago? And that's why universities are failing in large part. They're not being creative and innovative. They're saying we're going to stick to what we do no matter what. And it's really a blockbuster video model
Hmm.
of, of product development, if you will. And we need other examples.
I understand. And the other thing is also the university is having a partnership with industries because, as you said, the future workforce is not going to be met by the university students. Now, how do you think what kind of partnership industries and universities should have to make a future ready workforce?
That's a great question. Well, I think in our case, for example, our new general ed curriculum that's
Mhm.
purposefully interdisciplinary. was based and validated with industry folks who could tell us, yes, this is what we need. No, this is not what we need. Not solely based on that. A lot of it's critical skills, a lot of it's durable skills. A lot of it is really the liberal arts skills as we've defined them. But industry partnerships are critical for students to see how work works and
Mm-hmm.
in order to get jobs and show them how to behave at work. We not lost a lot of students. We the pandemic affected a lot of students. I like to say the pandemic has a long tail of trauma, big T and little t trauma. But one of the things we've also seen is developmentally delayed students, emotional development.
Mm-hmm.
Social media is adding to that delay of social development. So you add all this together and you get a lot of challenges with our students and our future work populations. And we've seen this in some of our um, hirings at different places, and I hear colleagues talk about this. It's the next generation. Everyone says the new generation doesn't work as hard as the old one. I don't think there's a lot of truth to that. But what I do think is they're not skilled in ways that are important. So they have to be taught those mature skills that you would typically get from students 20, 30 years ago.
Mm. Yes. So, what do you think in future? What would be the campus of the future? How it would be, in your opinion? Will there be
I think it'll
more
look like us.
robots
I think
there? Yeah.
we are at the leading edge of that. I think
Yeah.
it's neighborhood campuses. I think it's a different approach. There's online aspects. I think it's meeting the needs of different student groups simultaneously. The best universities aren't going to just focus on the 17-year-old undergraduate. If that's all you're doing, you're probably missing the boat. You don't understand that students learn differently. You're trying to homogenize the student experience and what students bring. Turns out students need personalized education at every developmental level. Now,
Mhm.
some students come in pretty mature. They might look like a 30-year-old if they're a 17 or 18-year-old. They might look like a 30-year-old in terms of maturity. That you educate that student different than you educate someone who comes in who may have had family trauma, who actually may, instead of looking like a 17-year-old, may look more like a 14-year-old in terms of developmentally. So you got to meet all those needs when you're educating a student. And I think that's what the future university will do is meet the needs of multiple students and offer lifelong learning to students who come back, who are older, seniors. What are they going to do if AI really does supplant a lot of entry level jobs? How can
Mhm.
it change what we do in our culture? Can it create opportunities for enhanced science work? Uh,
Mhm.
you know, Older folks were often taught. I kind of include myself in that group. Now I'm getting closer. Go retire and sit on a beach. Well, that sounds great for a few weeks, maybe, but at some point, you need to find meaning in what you're doing. And the
Yes.
best way to do that might be to engage in an area of work you've never thought of. If you were an accountant your whole life, maybe you want to be a teacher. Or you might want to be a scientist. You want to study plants. There's a lot of work to be done in our world. You want to study peace. How do we get to peace? Get into politics. There's all kinds of things folks can do. We've just really pigeonholed folks in ways in their careers and their lives that probably won't be as useful in the coming decades.
Interesting. And what would be an leadership lesson that you'd like to give to others in your similar situation of same size of university? What would be some, hey, this is what you should be thinking about now?
Yeah, I think the biggest leadership lesson is to be bold. Don't be influenced by fear of
Mhm.
changes. I think in higher ed, there's all kinds of pressures not to do things
Mhm.
versus just go do them. Don't let people dissuade you. Be consistent with your true mission. We want to make sure we're reaching populations that traditionally have been left out of higher education and students that have had access. We're hitting both student groups,
Mhm.
but that means you have to think of higher ed differently. And I would just say do that, and you will right the ship if you're going down a wrong path, and you will avoid the cliff, or you will preempt a challenge that's coming down if you don't.
Understand. And one thing, like always with AI, everything coming in, uh, the workforce is always very reluctant because it creates job loss and those kind of things. What's your take on that?
I think there will be job loss. I mean, the research right now is looking like there'll be job loss at the entry level positions, but
Mm-hmm.
there'll be job increases in certain areas around that need AI expertise of people. We could go, if there's a significant job loss, it may lead us to do universal basic income as a
Yeah.
model, which wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing. But more importantly, it'll help us develop fields that we've neglected. I just talked about, peace studies or how to create um, environments that are lower in violence, both physical violence, but also rhetorical or verbal violence that we see, you know, in our culture. I think, the future is going to be we'll be able to tackle those challenges more readily because there'll be more people focused on it. Because nobody wants to feel bad. We need mental health. We need, you're not going to, AI is not going to replace therapists anytime soon. It may replace aspects of what therapists can do. But I think what it'll also do, if we do it well, is we will come together as a community, um, and neighborhoods will become the center of social life like they used to be more. I hope that we can go into neighborhoods and find not a pharmacy that frisks you on the way in and out, these like you see these days in a lot of these big chain pharmacies, but more you have the local pharmacist who knows the people in the community, who has that interpersonal relationship. That's what's missing in our culture. And if you build those neighborhoods, that community,
Mm-hmm.
then what you have is a very different experience, not just for adults, but for kids to learn how to treat one another better. And I think right now we're not there, but I think that's where we're headed. And I think AI will actually help us get there.
Interesting. So to get a close, like, what is your future of or vision that higher education should be?
Well, I want them to again look at San Francisco Bay University as a model and then
Right.
expand and get better than us. We
Okay.
challenge other universities to do it like similar. Look at what we're doing and do it. If you think you can do it better, but do it better because there's a lot of need out there. Let's not just focus like we used to on select students and exclude others. Let's focus on all students and find out what do we need to do to make education a center of students' life, of everyone's life, to help them grow and develop into adults that, frankly, we need more of.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for your time, and I hope I'll connect with you again in another 6 months for a different topic. I think AI would be changed by that much more. We'll talk about it. Thank you.
Maybe. Thanks, Satish. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Have a great day.